Thanks for having me. I'm Navin Iyengar. I'm a product designer at Netflix, where I've been working on many different aspects of the product for many years. Netflix, in case you don't know, is a subscription service. It allows you to watch movies and TV shows over the internet on any device at any time. And so we're an entertainment service. So you might be surprised how serious and rigorous we are in our approach to product design and development. So I'd like to take the covers off of that a little bit today, talk to you about our scientific approach, and then I'm going to walk through 3 of the ways this approach has affected our design process. But first, I'd like to start with this guy, Galileo, who you all know. He was a scientist. He lived in 16th century in Italy. During Galileo's time, science had not changed in almost 2,000 years. It had been defined by the ancient Greeks, and nobody had really challenged their ideas all through the Middle Ages. And so one of the things that the Greeks said was that the heavier something is, the faster it falls through the air, which makes sense intuitively, right? You see a stone fall through the air, it goes fast. You see a feather sort of float down. Well, Galileo wanted to challenge this. He had an idea that he wanted to prove, which they would call a hypothesis, that weight had nothing to do with how fast something falls to the ground. And so he designed an experiment, what's become one of the most famous experiments of all time. He went to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and he dropped 2 stones. They were both the same size, but they were different weight. And he dropped them at the same time, and what do you suppose happened? They hit the ground at the same time. So in one instant, he had disproved what had been considered a scientific fact for almost 2,000 years. Now, as for why a feather falls slower, he couldn't prove it at the time. There was no experiment that he could go out and run. What he suspected was that it had something to do with the air particles around the feather. Now, what's cool is that as technology improves, you can run more sophisticated experiments. So recently, this was proved in dramatic fashion on this BBC 2 show. They got a huge vacuum chamber. They removed all the air. They got a huge stone. They got a huge feather. And they dropped them at the same time to really show, like I said, in dramatic fashion, that these things, well, I don't want to spoil it for you, actually. Let's see what happens. Wait for it. It's good. Yeah, okay. So at Netflix, we really appreciate this approach that instead of listening to conventional wisdom or what people are telling you the truth is, you go out, you observe real-world behavior, and you draw your own conclusions. And so the only difference is that instead of looking at the world of physical objects in motion, we are looking at the world of our customers' behavior. And so how do we do that? Well, we run experiments too. And we found this lens of experimentation, looking at our work as if it's a series of experiments, has really freed us up to think of trying innovative ideas and crazy ideas, potentially even stupid or risky ideas, but in a small-scale way first, to really understand the effects before we roll them out to a large customer base. Because really what we're trying to do is solve a problem that you may have, which is we have way more ideas than we could ever actually design and build and ship to our customers. So what experimentation allows us to do is try a little bit of a lot of ideas to find out what has the most potential impact. And so at the core of all experiments is this idea of the scientific method, whether it's Galileo's experiment or us trying to improve our sign-up funnel. And really, it sounds fancy, but the scientific method is really just a systematic way of trying to find out information about the world. Not just any information, reliable information. Information that you can use to make decisions on, that you can predict future behavior. And so we use a simplified version of what the scientific method is. You start with a hypothesis. This is you stating what you want to do to the product, how you're going to improve it, how you're going to measure that you improved it, and you're stating it in a way that you can prove it true or false. Then you're running some experiment. This is you observing real-world behavior in as unbiased a fashion as possible. And then you have some result where you're resolving what you observed with your hypothesis and deciding whether it was true or false. Now, whether it's true or false, those are actually both valuable things. If it's true, that's great. You've just opened up a new area of exploration of improving your customer's experience. If it's false, that's also good because you've just eliminated a whole area that could have been a drain on resources while you tried to make it better. And so for us, what experimentation really means in the product development setting is A/B testing. This is the only way that we've found to truly run an experiment and be able to establish cause and effect. So we can say that by adding this feature to the product, we've created this specific change in our business metrics. I do want to talk about the word testing quickly because it's used somewhat broadly. We have a lot of different methods that we use at Netflix to get feedback from customers, to learn about our customers, and they all complement each other. They all have different strengths and are used in different parts of the product development process. We have surveys, so we're asking many people online multiple choice questions, getting their opinions. We have research sessions where we're talking more in depth in ethnographic studies or one-on-one interviews to understand the wants and needs of people, to put prototypes in front of them and see how they use them. And then on the more quantitative side, we have trends and data where we're looking in aggregate at how people use our service, trying to find correlations. But really, A/B testing is the only thing here that's truly an experiment that, like I said, allows us to establish this cause and effect. And so let me just talk a bit about how we A/B test in Netflix. It's a little more sophisticated than the experiment I talked about before, because we're running controlled experiments. So we will start with a hypothesis. This is just an example, but personalizing the content displayed on the home page will increase the amount of people who retain their Netflix subscription. So what we have is this control experience. That's our systems in production as they are today, because we want to keep a set of people in that experience to understand the difference between that and whatever feature we want to add. And then we're creating some set of variations. And these are really just different interpretations of what the hypothesis is. So you could imagine that personalization could mean many things in terms of the way we display it or the algorithms that are running it. And we really try to make these variations as disparate as possible because we're really trying to cover the whole space of what this hypothesis could really mean. And then we're actually putting these different variations into test. I should say there's a lot of art and judgment that goes into this experience because we can only build and test so many different variations. And there's also only so many people that we can test on. So what we're doing when we run the test is we're putting different people randomly into these different experiences. And for all intents and purposes, they believe when they open their app, for example, and they see that version of Netflix, that is Netflix for them. So they're acting in a very unbiased fashion. And then after some period of time, we've been measuring different metrics during all this time. It might be a week, it might be a month or longer. We are determining a winner, which is based on some business metric that we can tie back to the higher level goals of our business. And then once we have that winner, we roll that out to everyone. That is the new baseline. That's the new control experience for all the tests that we want to run on top of that. And so in my time at Netflix, we've run literally thousands of tests, maybe tens of thousands of tests. And we're constantly moving and iterating on the product and moving it in different directions, but only in directions that make sense and provide a return for us. And so if I could encapsulate this approach, we think of product development as a series of experiments. And what I'd propose is that this leads to stronger designs, whether you can test or not. Just this systematic way of approaching design, having a hypothesis, having different variations, and proving those under observation, I believe can lead to stronger results. And so for the rest of my time here, I just want to go through 3 of the ways that this approach has influenced our design process. So first, your metric is your compass. Okay, so you have a great idea for how to improve your product, you have a hypothesis, and if you have a good hypothesis, you've specified what you intend to measure in order to prove your hypothesis true or false. And as I mentioned, whether you are able to actually test or not, this idea of a metric can really inform your design process because it creates a more simple and focused design. And so let me expand on this idea of the compass. If you think about a designer or design team, during the course of a project, they're making thousands of decisions at a pixel level, at a layout level, at a flow level. Now, along the way, if you have the final destination in mind and you know what direction you're trying to go, that can be very helpful. But if you don't, you're going off course, the final design is definitely affected. Now, you could have some high-level goal here, like increased customer satisfaction. Sure, that's something we all want to do. But this doesn't really help you make design decisions at the concrete level of, like I said, pixels or interactions. And so you can draw down from that more specific metrics. These are all good examples. Amount of time people spend on your app, how often people visit, the number of actions people take. Now, the fact of the matter is these all ladder up to increase customer satisfaction, but you can really only pick one because optimizing for any one of these experiences or for any one of these metrics would create an entirely different experience. And if you don't know what the metric is that you're optimizing for, you're liable to end up in this situation where the designer of the shoe, I don't think, really understood what the success metric was that they were designing for. And so we found that this idea of having a metric not only helps our design team, but also the entire organization to really focus on a few key metrics and really be able to run forward optimizing those very quickly without having to check in with each other a lot. And so let me give you an example from the product. Suppose someone sends you a link to House of Cards. I'm going to show you two different pages that you could go to when you receive this link, but they have different metrics and hence different designs. So if you're a Netflix member, you land on this page. If you think about what the success metrics are for Netflix member, well, we're a subscription service. We want people to retain from month to month. In practice, specific design pages, for example, are not going to cause people to join or leave once you're a member. And so we have metrics that we draw down from that. One of the ones that we talk about a lot is streaming hours. So we know that the more that people stream Netflix, the more likely they are getting value out of it, the more likely they'll retain. And so you can see that this page is very much about getting you to play House of Cards. It's the biggest call to action. There's actually not that much information about House of Cards. You can get to it, you can click to get other information, but it's not the thing that we've put front and foremost. And then you can see that we're overlapping content off the bottom. Just in case you're not interested in House of Cards, there's all this other content here. Bottom line, we really want you to play on this page. But if you look at what a non-member sees when they follow the same link, you'll see this is quite a bit different. The call to action here is about joining for a free month. Of course, that's the success metric for a non-member, right? We want people to start a 1-month free trial, and we want them to convert into paid membership. But you'll also see that there's even less information here about House of Cards. And we've really gone big on the imagery. We're really trying to promote the service to feel premium and really get you excited about the content so that you join and watch House of Cards as your first experience. So as a designer, it might be tempting to say, well, these two pages should really be consistent, right? But I don't think they're going to be consistent anytime soon because they have two entirely different success metrics. So I'd ask you to have a think like crazy eyes here, about what your metrics are. Next time you start a design project, whether you can test or not, thinking about how you would measure the success of your design right from the beginning and using that as a compass all the way through every decision point can really lead to stronger designs. Second, design to the extremes. Okay, so you have a great idea for how to improve your product. You have a hypothesis. And now you're ready to create design variations. And what we found is that creating as disparate design variations as possible leads to the most success. So if you think about designers, I think there's this idea out there that the most intuitive designers are the best designers. The ones who just have an idea that pops into their head and that is the solution, those are the best designers. What we've found over years of testing at Netflix is that our intuition is often wrong. And not only is our intuition wrong, our PM's intuition might be wrong, our CEO's intuition might be wrong. And really, A/B testing is the only way that keeps us honest and allows us to just go where the numbers tell us. And so instead, if you do have an intuitive idea to start off with your design, that's great. Put that in your pocket and really explore the space of what the solutions are to your problem, and really go to the edge, to the boundaries, to potentially designing places that make you uncomfortable, or maybe even designs that you don't believe in, just to understand what the space is, because you may uncover ideas that improve your original design. And so to talk about how we did this at Netflix, we recently redesigned the Netflix member website. This is a member website about a year and a half ago. And so when we started the redesign process, we started at a very high conceptual level. And we talked about, well, what are some of the axes that we're trying to explore? One of the axes we talked about was active to passive. So the highest level, when you're using Netflix on a laptop, is it an active experience? Is it like any other website where you're sort of leaning forward, you're going through lots of different pages, you expect quite a bit of density of information? Or is Netflix inherently passive? Netflix is entertainment, after all, right? So you just want to sit down in front of Netflix at the end of the day and open a beer and not have a lot of choices and just watch something. Another axis we talked about was uniform to differentiated. What I mean by that is how much is the content on the page on an even playing field versus how much are we making certain titles larger or promoting them or making them feel more focused on. And so I'm going to show you some quick examples here these are some, sorry, I know it's going by quite quickly. These are some keynote prototypes that we took in qualitative sessions along the way to A/B test. But you can see that we were trying to push to the edges of some of these axes that we're talking about. So in this example, there was more differentiated content. You can see that some of it was larger. It was more passive in that we're not showing a lot of information. We're showing much less choices than were in the current version of Netflix. And in another version, this was a more uniform version. All the titles were really the same size. But once you indicated interest on something, you got a lot more information on that specific piece of content. You got the actors, what other titles they'd been in, similar content, reviews, all these other things that you could really delve into. And so what we found after exploring these was that neither one of these was the thing that we wanted to launch for the future of the Netflix website, but it uncovered a lot of different pieces of feedback that really helped us understand how to improve some of our original ideas. And so if I was to plot that back on our axes that we talked about, we were really going to the edges here, but where we actually ended up was, I'd say, about here. And so I'd ask you to think about what your extremes are next time you're starting a design project, whether you can test or not, really talking about what those axes are right at the beginning and trying to explore them. Your instinct might be right here, but unless you explore these 4 different corners, you're running the risk of missing an idea, uncovering a kernel of truth that might improve your original instinct. So lastly, I want to talk about observing what people do, not what they say. So you've got a great idea for how to improve your product. You've got your hypothesis, your design variations. Now it's time to observe. It's time to validate your hypothesis. So I'm going to jump right into an example here. This is a survey question we have asked many times. As I mentioned, surveys are part of our research toolkit. We've asked, what one thing would you like to know more about before signing up for Netflix? And the big red sector here that always comes up first is all movies and TV shows available. So it might surprise you to know that when you sign up for Netflix today, we don't let you search the whole catalog or navigate through it. You really have to sign up for the free trial, and then we let you in there and you can watch anything as much as you want. And so we've seen that come up a lot in surveys. Anytime a new designer joins our team, they say, why don't we do this? And so this hypothesis had really been bubbling up. The hypothesis being by showing members, by giving them access to the catalog before they sign up for the free trial, will increase our business metrics, acquisition, conversion to paid membership. And so we could have just jumped to A/B testing at this point, but we really want to understand some of the nuances of this along the way. So we went into qualitative sessions, we built prototypes. I want to show you the control experience at the time, which was quite simple. It was start your free month button. It was an image of people watching a TV, watching Netflix on the TV, 3 supporting points about the devices you can watch, making it easy to cancel, things like that. And then we created a prototype. We actually created several prototypes, but I'm just going to focus on this one. This one had navigation. It allowed you to go to different places on this non-member site. If you scrolled down, you could see that there were rows of recommendations and just similar to our member experience. You could navigate over to different genres and subgenres. All the while, you can't actually play anything. Netflix is not an ad-supported service. You have to start the free trial to play the content. And so even in these qualitative sessions, we were starting to see something interesting, which was that when we asked people what they wanted, they said, yes, this is exactly what I want. I need to see the content before I sign up for Netflix. But when we observed them using the prototypes, we could see that they were getting bogged down. They were looking for specific pieces of content. They were going into what we call shopping mode. They were kind of just trying to find what the piece of content that they wanted to decide whether Netflix was right for them. And so we were starting to believe that this might not be the right non-member experience for Netflix. But the only way to really go from believing to knowing that was to run an A/B test. And so we did. We ran actually 5 A/B tests. Each of them had a control experience, multiple variations, and every time the test lost. Why 5? I want to say that we just wanted to make sure that we didn't have the right idea, the right hypothesis, and the wrong execution. So we really tried many, many different variations of how this could work. But every time, the winner was the control experience. And it was really good learning for us because it helped us understand that even though listening to customers and what they were saying was that they wanted to see the content, in practice, what helps people sign up for Netflix and convert to paid membership is the experience of the free trial. It's not just the content. It's being able to see the simplicity of the UI, being able to use it on multiple devices and start watching in one place and continue in another place, et cetera. So that was a really great learning for us. That said, we didn't want to not listen to our customers. Obviously, there's clearly a need there. And so we did continue testing. This is where our non-member page is today after subsequent testing. So it still has some of the simple aspects of the earlier design. But we've created this non-interactive wall of content in the background that shows you what's available in your region. So we feel like this creates a good balance between what people's needs are, which is they want to see generally what's available in Netflix, and our needs as a business that people sign up for free trials and convert to paid membership. So I'd ask you again to think about whether you can test or not, what can you observe? If you can A/B test, that's great, because that is the gold standard. That is the most unbiased way to observe customer behavior. But if you can't, it's so easy to prototype these days. There's so many tools out there. You can prototype your ideas, put them in front of people, and when you do that, don't just listen to them. Observe them. Observe how they actually use your prototypes, because I can't count how many times I've been in a qualitative session and someone's been asked to perform a task, and we asked them how easy it was, and they say, yeah, that was easy. But if we looked at the video, or we observed them as they're using it, we can see that they stumbled around a lot. They made a lot of mistakes along the way, but the human brain sort of filters that stuff out. And so to circle back around, we think of product development as a series of experiments. And what I'd propose is that whether you can A/B test or not, using the systematic approach to your design, having a hypothesis, design variations, thinking about metrics, and observing the actual use of your design leads to stronger results. So that's my time. Thanks very much. I'm Nevin_ on Twitter. Last thing I'll mention is that this talk itself is an experiment, and so feel free to come up and talk to me afterwards today. I'd love to hear your feedback.